So, I am going to take you all on a little journey this morning. I'm excited that this presentation will be more or less the last presentation of this body of work. And so, to close the chapter on fitness communication, you all are my journeyes going along on the story with me. And so, Fitcom, fitness communication, as you can see here, had t-shirts, we had swag, and what Fitcom was a side hustle for me as a communication professor in January of 2020. And so my idea was to create a small boutique business that I could use to generate a side income to help small fitness owners with their communications and marketing. So that was the idea of fitness communication. So you had dancers, you had gym owners, a lot of the trainers at my bodybuilding gym were veterans who'd never really known how to do communications. So what they would do is kind of just half-ass it, so to speak. And so I thought, okay, I'll create this sort of industry that I could help people in my field because I was really interested in fitness and human performance. Well, what happened in March of 2020? Do you remember? COVID happened in March in 2020. And so you can imagine that a luxury business like fitness communication, where you're advertising your services, wasn't necessarily needed. And a couple of my first clients I did for free. And so essentially I'm like, well, this isn't going to do anything for me except make extra work, which academics love to do, is take on extra work. And so what I did instead was I created a body of scholarship instead. So now it's 2021, 2022, and I'm going on sabbatical from the University of Tampa where I work. And I thought, okay, what we can do instead, I worked with a partner for a little bit, is study fitness communication in places and spaces of fitness and health and human performance. And so that's what we have today, is fitness communication, understanding if we can improve body and physical outcomes using communication research. So I'm a communication scholar. I specifically study organizations, presentations, and sometimes fitness and health. And so what we did was put together this study that you see here. And so over the last couple of years, it's sort of morphed and changed in a lot of ways, and that's the journey I'm going to take you on right now as I move on to other products. So when I ask a question about $36 billion, what do you think I mean? What do you think $36 billion refers to?
The fitness industry.
You got it. From Ibis World, it's the fitness industry in the United States. And so this is a big industry. It's about half the size of public relations. It's about a quarter of higher ed. So it's very, very large as the landscape of the United States. And so what we're going to do is demonstrate how the scholarship that I did can affect you, which is the second thing here. I want you to think about how you do your fitness. So if it's walks in the morning through a great state of Washington, if it's women-only yoga, if it's the gym last night after our presentation, how do you do your sort of health and fitness? And there's people along the way who don't do it, but in Florida, where we hail from, it's pretty much the gold standard. So we took a look at what the literature says, and there was a gap specifically about how communication scholarship could help physical outcomes. There's a lot about marketing and how marketing can help people raise more money, but I was interested in how could people have better outcomes with their body, their health, and their fitness. And so you saw in the literature things about social media image. So if you are looking at media, or if you know anyone who's a media scholar, there's a lot about our kids being on social media, a lot about young women feeling inadequate or having false sense of self-image. There's a little bit about men, specifically LGBT men, specifically young men who are smaller and not feeling adequate in the gym. But there's not a lot of literature when it comes to how could the communications with an S from the fitness space itself affect the actual physical outcomes of the people. And so there's a causation there that we're not quite sure how it would work, but we wanted to know if it could work. Good morning. Come on. So these were the questions that we had. We wanted to know. We're talking about fitness communication and how if scholarship could affect the physical outcomes that we have. First, I wanted to know, can organizational cultural theory explain the practice and places and spaces of fitness? So essentially the lens I use is org-com theory, which I'll explain in just a second. And then how does understanding answers like this lead to helping individuals practice for themselves and others, specifically in fitness communities? And so as the literature sort of helped us along, we saw the void that there wasn't a lot about the marketing and communications affecting how the people actually feel. That's what these two questions were trying to get at. So one thing I wanted to impart before we move on is the so what. I'm an applied communication scholar specifically. I'm not a cultural critical guy. And I want to know, when we find the answers, what can we do with them? And that's the most important thing to me as a communication scholar. So that's what I want you to keep in mind. You've got your fitness spaces if you participate, and then what can we do with the information that we found? So, is anybody familiar with organizational cultural theory out of the Comm Studies Scholarship? Anybody? Do we have any Comm scholars with us? Speech teachers? Sometimes? Essentially, the assumptions are this, that the members create and maintain the semblance of the shared organizational reality. This is a social construction theory. There's several social construction theories in Comm, which basically says that humans give meaning to reality, which we can argue is not always the case, but in a lot of ways it explains the sociological values of communication. Then we use the interpretation model of our own human behavior to interpret the symbols that are critical to an organization's being, right? So when you walk into a room like this, you know that there's some sort of presentation that's going to happen. Because why?
I can see the computers, the screen.
Yep, and all of the chairs are facing forward. In the West, we do this, right? When you walk into the hotel downstairs, right when you arrive from the airport, what do you expect?
Slot machines.
Slot machines and a check-in of some sort, right? And so we have come to believe these things to be, and that way we can make the discerning factor that this is a hotel, this is a conference room. Well, we use these elements. Come on in. We're talking about fitness. We also know that cultures vary across organizations. So if you've ever taken a look at an organization's culture, you know accounting's culture might be completely different than finance. And you know the marketing people are the most fun. And you know the salespeople make the most money, right? And so culturally, you can look at these subcultures within an organization. So I framed this in organizational cultural theory, which this drives the questions that we ask. Essentially, we used Qualtrics. Is anybody using Qualtrics yet? So we're using Qualtrics. It sort of made SurveyMonkey die and all that. And at the time of this particular paper, there were 400 respondents. Now there's over 500 because the study is open and available on my Instagram account, which you'll see at the end if you'd like to follow the journey with me. And that yielded over 2,500 responses that we coded. So I'm more or less a mixed methods scholar, but I particularly play in thematic analysis. And we use Creswell's model of thematic analysis. Is anybody familiar with that? I'll explain that in just a second. So what we did is we convenience sampled this. Basically, we asked people what they thought about their fitness experiences at their gyms and places of health and wellness. And it was on my Instagram account for, well, it's still open, but at the time of the paper it was on there for about a year or so. So people could conveniently just come on, answer the questions. We didn't really break it down by race, gender, culture, age, or race because it doesn't really make that much difference necessarily because those weren't the intersections that we were looking for. So how would you describe culture? This is a sample of about the 12 to 15 questions, but for the sake of a presentation, just to sort of get your appetite wet a little bit. These were the major questions you're going to see answers to. So, how would you describe the culture of one or more of your current places of fitness? And it was operationalized as like it could be a dance studio, it could be a gym, it could be a women's only gym, it could be a bodybuilding gym, which is something that I like to participate in. Are there communication behaviors in the fitness world that would be confusing to people outside of the fitness world? Do you know what we call this pretty much in the literature? When we have lingo, academics have lingo that people outside the academic world don't know. What do we call that? The military has words that the regular people don't know. What do we call that?
Lexicon?
It's a lexicon, or we say jargon, right? So jargon, people don't know what a Qualtrics survey is downstairs in the Harris Casino necessarily, right? And so in fitness places, people don't know necessarily what a squat deck is, right? Or what a Smith machine does. And so we'll talk about that. And then what are some symbols of behavior or artifacts that are specific to your gym? So can you think of some? Like if you think of just a straight up old-fashioned Arnold Schwarzenegger bodybuilding gym, what would you see when you walk in? Free weights. What are they made of?
Plates.
What are the plates made of? Iron, steel, metal. They clink and clank. Have you gone into a newfangled gym where everything's rubber? Nothing makes noise. It's quiet. It's like a library. It's weird.
Well, the floors are rubber too now.
And the floors are rubber?
Yeah, it doesn't make that cheese.
And if you haven't been in a gym lately, the youngsters are wearing sandals. So that's a whole other discussion for a different
I
day.
say that for
Yeah. But so this may be clothing trends, social media, etc. So I work out at a gym called Powerhouse. You might have one of those. It's a franchise in your neighborhood. I don't know. But people film themselves working out. It's a huge trend. It's happening everywhere. It's not just the biggest, baddest, fittest people. It's everyone on every journey. And so that's really interesting because people come in, they see the cameras, and they get intimidated. Gym-intimidation, I think it's called. All right, so here's what we found. And I'm going to walk over here just so I can explain it because it's a little small from the screen. When you do a thematic analysis, essentially what you do is you look for major themes, minor themes, unexpected themes, and other. And you code by hand, or you can have a program code your qualitative data into those 4 to 5 themes. And so in the first question, the culture of the gym, the major themes that we found was that people favored camaraderie, friendship, and accepting. So a lot of people, regardless, there were demographic markers in some of the questions. A lot of people, regardless of gender or race or sexuality or whatever, they did find that the gym was accepting. Now, I think this is interesting because it's sort of a self-serving principle. Wouldn't you only go to a gym that you find accepting? So that's kind of an interesting problem with this. A minor theme is that sometimes people were really hard on the atmosphere of their gym. So they would say things like, there's monsters who work there, or my gym is really douchey, which is a fun word to see. And it came up quite frequently, this idea of being douches. And then unexpected things is that when you see a theme emerge that you weren't expecting in the hypothetical or the research questions, and we didn't think that people would say like it's low key or that there's not a lot going on. And so I thought it was interesting because in my perception, gyms are these high energy, lots going on, clanging weights, and some people thought that maybe it was serene. So that could have been a yoga studio or something like this. This is really interesting to the so what question I asked in the beginning, like what can we do with this work? And so from a marketing perspective or communications with an S perspective, some of the machines were found confusing by what people call them. There's also the cultural aspect of like the lingo that the guys use, like bro and yo, bro and whatever. It's like over and over and over and over again, regardless of age in a lot of cases. Then there's the jargon that actually goes with the physical elements of physical weightlifting and fitness, like max out, how many sets, how many reps, max weight, go to failure, things like this. And then some people said that there was conversations and compliments. It's not uncommon in some gyms to be complimented by strangers. There's also a whole other body of research about a third place. Have you guys read any of this information about third places? There's a big old piece in the Times about it. So essentially, what's your first place where you spend your most time? Home. What's your second place? Work, usually for a lot of Americans. What's your third place? And for everyone here, it could be a bar, it could be a coffee shop, it could be a gym. And so a lot of times you look at a third space is where people feel safe and comfortable. And you might receive compliments from people that you don't know their name, but you see them every Wednesday for 5 years. And then there's some other minor things that we weren't expecting, like the unhealthy body image. The literature said stuff like that, but we weren't expecting necessarily to see this vanity piece. Nonverbal behavior, which I thought was a really thoughtful answer from several respondents. Like, you know when it's time to go hop on a piece of machinery because you make eye contact with the people and they nod and it's over. Or you go up and you ask, like, how many more sets? Both people have headphones on, but everybody knows what the heck you're talking about, which is really interesting. I'm also really curious about social interactions at the gym. And it's funny when you see a group of boys that all have headphones on, and it's like, if you're working out with your friends, why are you listening to music? And if you ask them that, they'll say it's for motivation. But isn't that what having the other guy there is for? So it's really it's interesting to me. And then sizing people up. Sometimes people walk into a gym and they're really intimidated by the people because they don't know the gym culture. Do you guys ever get, like, in a new space, do you ever get a little nervous about knowing if you're gonna have a place for your stuff? If there's locks? You ever get nervous about any of that stuff? You ever go on a cruise, not know if you're supposed to have, like, your sunscreen with you, not with you, if it's okay for the reef, things like this? That sort of anxiety is what gym culture can set up if people don't get a proper tour, if they just walk in and they take off and do things. Finally, we asked a question about what are the symbols at your gym. Has anybody gone to a Planet Fitness? Can you imagine? It's a national franchise. Can you see their marketing right now?
Picturing the gym.
It's what?
It's soft. There's no aggression.
It's no aggression. What color is it?
Yellow.
It's purple and yellow, which they did a good job with this type of information because we know purple is a soft color. And I would argue that they went too far because there's, like, murals on the wall and things that say, like, no lugs, no thugs. They have a pizza day, which is really counterintuitive to fitness. And they say no grunting. I mean, I grunt when I'm, like, something's on top of me, I grunt, right? They say things like no gym intimidation. And it's almost a little too much, I think. It's off-putting to me. In the suburb where my parents are, it's the one gym I have to use. And I'm like, oh, this is so cheesy. But their equipment is new and it does the job. Clothes people wear. I'm wearing a shirt that's made by Gymshark. Gymshark is an English company. It's quite popular right now because it's not as expensive as Lululemon. That could be their marketing. Gymshark, we're not Lululemon. People flex all over the time, depending. It used to be sort of taboo in a lot of spaces to, like, look at yourself in the mirror, take pictures. Now it's just everywhere. You've got front-facing cameras like this one, as well as you have social media. Social media posts, CrossFit. Do you guys remember the CrossFit movement from about 10 years ago? You might all have broken shoulders because of it. CrossFit made a lot of the fitness spaces more comfortable for people who are more average and not really on some sort of crazy bodybuilding journey. Expensive gym attire, tank tops. I went to a college that didn't allow tank tops in the gym. I think that's quite weird. But supposedly it was to keep the machines clean. I think it's because it was in Indiana. And then shoes, like different types of shoes that people wear. I just made a joke about the youngsters, but look at, how many of you guys have traditional college students at your universities? Like 21, 22, 19. Look at what they've got on their feet. It's ugly white socks and Birkenstock sandals, and it's crazy, and they're wearing that to the gym, which is even sillier. And so when you think about these things, this whole culture emerges, and the question becomes, so what? So that's what the end of the paper is about, is the so what? What do we do with this information? And when you have a $36 billion industry, and you have the ability to survey respondents that can tell you what they like, how they feel, and what they want to act like in a gym, we, as people who play in the communication space, especially marketing communication, org-com, strat-com, we should take that information and capitalize on it in two ways, right? The first is financially. We can help people from a consulting perspective. But the second is to help people. If people feel intimidated by gym spaces, dance spaces, yoga spaces, CrossFit spaces, there could be a possibility for a gym owner, a trainer, a coach, a yoga instructor to help people feel better by knowing this information. It's kind of simple in a lot of ways, but you'd be surprised at how bro-y some gyms become, or how put off gyms become, how confusing gyms can become. And so that's what the discussion in the paper is how can we improve and elevate fitness culture, whereby then hopefully improving the fitness outcomes of the people who are on their weight loss journey, their bodybuilding journey, their dance journey, gymnastics, etc. So I bring you through this journey in a couple of ways. I started by saying that it's probably the last time we'll present this work. I'd like to get this published and out. I'm moving on to another study about group projects, and I think we teach, my working hypothesis is that we teach group projects incorrectly in college. I call it 5 bros and a podium. You get a group, and many of you might have group projects in your classes. Does anybody have a group project? And you maybe haven't known how to train the kids to do the things that they should be doing. So in my university, we are really big on aesthetics, since we think it's really cool to have all the tables and chairs crammed in together like this, and the students have to stand up here, and I call it 5 bros and a podium. Buenos dias. So we're moving on to that, and we're putting this to sleep. And so that was the journey that I wanted to take you on today, was to see, okay, fitness communication, can we improve fitness outcomes for people by understanding the marketing and communication surrounding these experiences? So if you're on Instagram and you'd like to follow the journey, my Instagram handle is FitcomChris with an underscore on Instagram. This survey is also there and open if you would like to participate and have your voice heard about the fitness spaces. Thanks.
I think we may have a couple of minutes.